Day 1168 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 959,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,430 in the past day. Then as for hardware, 3 tanks, 5 APVs, 61 artillery, a multiple rocket launcher, a BM-21 Grad, and 3 pieces of special equipment, a category that covers all manner of potentials, like this one, a black eye video jammer, 2 of them in fact, which were located close enough together for destruction by a single Ukrainian FPV earlier in the week. With the platforms clearly not jamming the video feed for the AFU operators on this such 2-for-1 discount occasion, nonetheless they are considered a high priority target, just like this next example that would fit the generic description if it were destroyed in this most recent case of a hit on a Zaslon naval radar station, tracked en route, mounted on a wheeled chassis, and by no means an off-the-shelf product, and likely to cost somewhere in the vicinity of $10 to $20 million a unit, which is designed to detect targets at ranges of up to 300 kilometers and track up to 200 objects simultaneously, at least on paper. It's also the first instance of such a Russian platform that has been hit during this entire war. Then headed to the map into Russia, where it was another busy and consecutive night of those mechanical democratic birds flying into the country as Ukraine launched a major UAV offensive overnight, with Russian authorities claiming the intercept of at least 19 drones. Reports of the drone attack or debris from the downed drones were said to have damaged various infrastructure, with all 4 major Moscow airports temporarily halting operations. The remains of one Russian Pantsir S-1 air defense missile was noted landing in the window of a low-rise building, and it's due to the makeup or construction of these Pantsir systems that uses missiles that are 2-stage solid fuel rockets, but they don't have self-destruct mechanisms or trajectory termination features in the way that many Western air defense missiles do. After firing, its booster or even the whole missile body can fall back down to earth, often uncontrolled, with Russian weapon systems often prioritizing a cheap style of mass production over that of urban safety concerns. But most impressive overnight was said to be from the reported activity in Nadim, as per Russian Telegram reports, and a location that is some 2,600 kilometers or 1,600 miles away from the front lines, resulting from UAV activity, and where local airports in this region were not expecting such attention, forcing their administrative units to immediately introduce restrictions in shutting down flights. Now, if confirmed, this means Ukraine's drone repertoire has expanded its strike range to unprecedented ranges, and presumed to hit a range of about 2,500 to 3,000 kilometers, something that was foreshadowed in December of last year. And for some added context, a distance of this magnitude would absolutely shatter the previous range record of 1,850 kilometers in Russia's northwest Murmansk sector. Not to mention, the timing appears deliberately calibrated to probe Moscow's air defense capabilities ahead of the May 9th celebrations, a symbolically significant date for Russia. Then headed down the map to Crimea and the wider Black Sea area, because in follow-up to the recent Russian aircraft downing off the coast of Novorossiysk, it appears that Russia's war correspondents are no longer echoing the party line, they're just echoing pain, because Alexander Sladkov, one of the Kremlin's loudest war chroniclers, now sounds more like a man in free fall, as he wrote, quote, "We're being swatted like flies, beaten, I feel sorry for us," with further telling accounts of how Russian commanders are locked into a loop of keep striking with no target and no result. And as for the drone threat, well, as he explains, they're everywhere, boats, skies, and even from space, with that last comment showing his defeatist mindset. He also wrote that, quote, "We must let the war think for us," which is really a confession of strategic bankruptcy, because it suggests that Russia should be acting based on the realities of the war, as opposed to that spray and pray attitude he just mentioned earlier. Meanwhile, since we're in the region, following the events of that unmanned naval vessel taking down a Russian jet, or jets in fact, Su-30s, over the weekend, Ukraine intelligence chief Bottleneck has subsequently stated that it was in fact 3 of the latest generation Magura V-7 drones, sporting AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles used to shoot down the Russian aircraft, with 2 of the 3 Magura V-7s which had fired shots. Then headed up the map and back to Kursk, where latest AFU operations are looking to be less raid and more full-scale push. Think mine-clearing armor and paratroopers, plus drone strikes, all rolled into one. Earlier reports indicated that Ukrainian forces had advanced near Tyotkino and to the Gloshkovo direction, a point on the map where the head of the Russian district announced the evacuation of those in the area. Russian bloggers are sharing maps showing Ukrainian incursions in the 2 directions. However, so far, the Russian MOD is very silent on the matter, not long after claiming a full ousting of Ukrainian forces from Kursk back on April 28th. But also quiet on this matter is Ukraine, holding true to their previously shown professionalism in adhering to the silence of OPSEC, thus making it difficult to get a read on events at the moment. But no matter what the case is for what might be unfolding in this sector, the AFU's astounding, resolute message remains the same. And that's using the battlefield to tell Russia that they cannot leave their hundreds of miles of northern border unprotected, and done so as a means to go play fight somewhere else in the east, for risk of turning into another embarrassing situation of turning the largest foreign occupation of Russian soil since World War II into a second times the charm kind of event, practically at the same location too. Then headed into the Ukrainian map today with various to and fro activity seen. For instance, Ukrainian defense forces regained positions in Lysivka, which is in the Pokrovsk direction. Meanwhile, on the western side of the same front, Russian forces extended to near the settlement of Novo-Alexandrivka and Kotlyarivka, which is part of events that, as of now, represents the highest point of attacks seen as part of Russia's spring-summer offensive operations, in their rush to capture more land, on a continuing attritional basis for meager gains. In fact, these meat assaults are now statistically shown to be growing in size, albeit with less armor and relying on motorcycles and donkeys, which tends to understandably correspond with what is now the highest military personnel losses for Russia, those rates seen in the entire war. Low armor and high loss rates, 2 items of which that are inherently linked, and not just a coincidence. Then looking around the map, as we saw footage of a Ukrainian Air Force Su-27 flanker conducting a precision airstrike on towed artillery emplacement. The flanker scored direct hits, laying waste to both the artillery piece and its ammo trench. Then, speaking of infield ammo storage, a Russian bunker and ammo depot blew up on the Kinburn Spit of the Kherson region, as can be seen in the freeze frame. Then headed to some news for today, into some international news, as President Zelensky picked up the phone to thank outgoing German Chancellor Olaf Scholz for his steady hand through this full-scale war in Ukraine. Scholz returned the nod, praising Ukraine's grit and Zelensky's steel. And now, as Germany reshuffles, Friedrich Merz is stepping in as Chancellor, who is known for his strong support of Ukrainian defense and sovereignty. Meanwhile, as a strong show of support in continuity of defense policy, the new German SPD-CDU coalition is keeping Boris Pistorius in place as defense minister, an individual in a key position also known to show strong support for Ukraine. Meanwhile, on the US leadership front, President Trump continues to express more sentiments in the general terms of the scales tipping in Kyiv's favor. Behind the scenes, his team is tying a US-Ukraine minerals deal to put tougher pressure on Moscow, with Treasury Secretary Bessent speaking at the Milken conference stating that the US isn't going anywhere, referring to the US role in supporting Ukraine and pressuring Russia, particularly through that US-Ukraine minerals deal. Then at the same time, Trump and Turkish President Erdogan spoke over the phone, both backing the push to end the Russo-Ukrainian war. There is also a likely bid by Turkish President Erdogan to reset ties with the US after Ankara's 2019 expulsion from the F-35 fighter jet program, where Turkey seeks re-entry into, and lost it over its acquisition of Russia's S-400 missile systems. And given the passage of time, with the poor performance put on display by those air defense systems within the SMO, that clearly turned out to be a poor choice. Then to a quick bite of Russian economy news, as Russia's economy teeters on the edge as war expenditures surge and oil revenues plummet. The Kremlin is set to triple its 2025 budget deficit to $42 billion, a 250% increase, driven by defense spending now at about 40% of total federal budget expenditure, which is the highest since, well, the Cold War. To add further trouble to the mix, Russian Ural crude oil prices are falling over 40% below original Russian budget projections, slashing Russian energy revenues, forcing Moscow to reconsider tax hikes and borrowing to cover the shortfall. Ukrainian intelligence warns that this fiscal imbalance signals a looming economic crisis as the Kremlin prioritizes military ambitions over financial stability. Then headed across to the shortest of funny segments I've ever done to round off the video today, guys, where we see some relatively unique footage caught on a Ukrainian drone cam of perhaps some new training exercises by the Russian ground-crawling forces, or punishment for drinking on the job. Oh, and one last thing, during President Zelensky's visit to the Czech Republic yesterday, aka Czechia these days, Zelensky came across some unexpected fans, as he came across some women who work as cleaners in the Czech parliament. He looks a little awkward standing there, but I suppose he does bring a certain underdog star power on his international travels. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Bit of a shorter video perhaps. Recording software was playing up, so I had to switch to backup, the old computer. But thanks again for watching, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!